All right. So this presentation comes with toys. No, you don't get to take them home. I do have something that you can take home after the presentation. I have the best stickers in the house. These are NFC stickers. You can stick it on anything. But why they're so cool, because they're blank, is they're programmable stickers. At a dev conference, I think that's just the best. But, you know, that's just me. So if you want to come by after the talk or anytime during the conference, you can run into me. I will have some of these. You can have one. And I will show you today how to program them, hopefully, if we get started. OK, I'm good. All right, so if you didn't know, I hope you already knew, we're at the Xamarin Developer Summit. We're in Houston. So if you didn't know that, now you do. If you want to tweet about anything involving the conference, make sure you use the Xam Dev Summit. Make sure all your friends know what they missed out on, because this is an amazing conference. So my talk is going to be NFC is magic. You can blame my boss for this idea of the theme. I had the magic of NFC. And he's like, why don't you put a little My Little Pony twist on it? And I'm like, OK. So we went with, instead of friendship as magic, we have an NFC as magic. My name is Sean Sparkman. If you're not familiar with me, my Twitter handle is going to be everywhere. So tweet at me if you have any questions afterwards, or you can email me. I work at a neat little company called Infinity Interactive. I'm a team lead and senior developer there. I'm also a Microsoft MVP. And I don't know how that transitioned by itself, but must be some magic, right? So these are the amazing sponsors that put on this amazing conference. If it wasn't for these sponsors, we wouldn't be here. So make sure you visit their booths and say hello, or lounges. I guess they're lounges. If you haven't seen the agenda yet, check it out. There's an amazing app out there. If you're having any problems with it, make sure you check for an update. There was a slight issue. It's a pretty cool app. So once upon a time, I was a young kid, and I liked sci-fi and fantasy and all those lovely things. And one of the things that I loved is holograms. And it's the whole appeal to holograms to me was bringing the digital world into reality. And NFC kind of, to me, is a way of doing that. So let's talk about what is NFC. So if you didn't know, which by the show of hands earlier you probably do, and this is just a repeat, near-field communication is what NFC stands for. It's based on the RFID standard. Does anybody here have a passport? So you probably have an RFID in that. Makes scanning those for a lot easier. So NFC is also a starting point for a lot of other technologies you may not be aware of. Android Beam, Bluetooth pairing, S-Beam. There's even some wireless access points that you can just tap your phone to and you connect to the Wi-Fi. So what is an NFC chip look like? So this is a big antenna wrapped around the little writable memory. And it's really small. I've seen some that are just like the size of my pinky nail. And if you can't see this, they're super, super thin. So I can fit this on a business card, right? Or on a badge. There's been some conferences that instead of QR codes, they have NFC tags, which is really cool, I think. There's a lot of different stuff you can do with it. These are some of the types and sizes that are out there. This is a bit old. It is somewhat limited on how much space you can have on there. It's not like SD cards where you can put, a terabyte or whatever they're up to now. Does anybody follow that? I remember when I was a kid, we got this huge hard drive. It was a whole 8 megabytes. I was so excited. Thing was huge. But yeah, there's not much space on here. It is a good leaping point for other technologies. And I'll show you what you can do with it here in a little bit. So this isn't really magical, right? I'm talking about bringing the digital world into reality. This doesn't seem very magical. Well, let's talk about some of the things that people are doing with it. Does anybody here use Apple Pay? Yeah, Apple Pay. Anybody use Google Wallet? No, you don't want to admit it? I notice the hands are kind of like... So that's some of the things we can do with it. One of the really exciting things that I was really excited about was Disney Infinity. And they had these little figurines, and they're bringing toys into the digital world, but you're also bringing it's kind of crossing over. And you have this toy you can play with, but you can also play with it in a game. Unfortunately, Disney kind of went away with it because Disney's like cutting money in IT, but that's another story if you want to talk to me about that later. But in the base of these is an NFC chip. And it's really just an ID, and you plug it into their special NFC reader that you attach to your Xbox or your PS4 or your Xbox 360 or whatever system, right? And it tells the game that you've bought this toy and you can now play it in the game. And there's some other little pieces in there that let you have different levels and things like that. But it's to me, it's kind of crossing over, and we've got AR and VR. This is kind of like the opposite. Instead of going into the digital world, we're bringing things out of it. They had Skylanders. I haven't seen those in stores lately. Amiibo is the last one that seems to be out there. Amiibo is the Nintendo version. Does anybody here have a Nintendo? Wii U, Switch, whatever? So one of the interesting things is they had the horse. Does anybody remember the name of the horse? What? Epona. Yeah, so you could get the horse, but only if you had the Amiibo, and you put it on the thing, and it became part of the Zelda game, which I thought was really fun. So the only problem I've seen with it is that this is one of the Amiibos, and so is this. Is that they do use standard NFC, which means that people can clone it. So, in fact, these stickers are advertised as being able to clone these, and because it's a standard, it's not proprietary. Anybody can do it with your Android phone. So there is a little problem with that. I haven't really looked into the security of it, but it makes sense if they could have a unique ID and they register it and prevent other people from using it or something like that. But that's kind of been the limitation in that area. The other big one, and if you see it down here, is the Magic Band. Has anybody gone to Disney World or Disneyland or whatever variety of name? I think they have them on the cruises too. So that's another one. So that's pretty cool, right? Rainbows in the eyes, I don't know. So let's talk about NFC payment. There used to be a soft card one that it was one of the first. It was for Windows Phone. Any Windows Phone fans out there? One, two. Anybody else not just admitting it? I was a Windows Phone fan for a long time. I still am. I don't have any more, but my wife kept breaking them. Anyway, so what it worked is instead of like having a magnetic barcode, you'd have your ID on the NFC chip, and that's really great. Except, the problem with NFC is that somebody else could potentially scan it and steal your ID. So Apple Pay tied it to the Touch ID. So you had to do Touch ID for it to work. And it sort of initiated a handshake, and then it would pass the ID. And that's how it was secure. It would be the same thing of like entering a PIN or something like that. And the Google Wallet has its own equivalent of that. Does anybody find these fascinating? I think it's so awesome that I can just go up and I can tap the thing and I'm done and I'm paid. I don't have to swipe it. I don't have to stick the stupid card in and sit there and wait. Does anybody like sticking the card in? No. So yeah, I think NFC is a much better solution than sticking the card in. Sort of the problem though is that there are readers out there that can read NFC chips from a distance. The way they work is that, let's go back to this. So there's two types. There's passive NFC, which is what you're going to see in most of these. These are all passive NFCs. And the great thing about this is that I don't have to have a battery in here. This will last forever, as long as it doesn't corrode or rust or whatever. So I don't have to have these plugged in, right? I don't have to have a battery because it's passive. The power comes from the reader, and the reader sends the power to the chip, and it receives the signal back with whatever is encoded on the chip. Ideally, they work at about 20 centimeters, so it's a very short range on most readers. The best reception you're going to get is about 4 centimeters, so it's got to be pretty close to the thing, right? Even tapping it even. So there are some limitations. So 20 centimeters isn't very far. 4 centimeters isn't very far. If you can see here, here's the little reader that they have for Disney Infinity. You just set it on the stand. That's touching. And there's Skylanders. They had this. This is their reader that you plugged into your device. So let's talk a little bit about readers. So the iPhone, everybody's really excited. The iOS 11 came out, and we were actually able to use NFC. Before that, they had Apple Pay, and they had NFC in the phones, but as a developer, we couldn't access it. Apple limited that API. It was a private API. And then iOS 11 came out, and then they opened up the API so that we could read with it. So iPhone 7 and above can read NFC chips. Most Androids have an NFC reader in it. I'm gonna say that it's become a lot more popular since Google Wallet came along. People like being able to pay with their phone, and people like copying the iPhone because now all iPhones have NFC readers. Unfortunately, on the iPhone, you cannot write, but you can with Android, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do today. The other use that I really wanted to talk about is Disney, and we talked. I had a few show of hands. Who here's gone to like Six Flags or another amusement park? Y'all like lines?
Yes.
Yes? Well, one of the big things that Disney discovered is that waiting in lines suck. And the way that they used to do it is you had a card, a magnetic strip on the card, and you swipe the card to get into the park, right? That's super slow. And the magnetic strips would wear out because they're super cheap, because they were only for one visit. And they'd have multiple swipes. And then they introduced the thing called the Magic Band. So there's NFC in this, and you put it on the little device, and you tap it, and it shines green or red, almost doubling how fast they can get people in, or reducing the time to scan in people by half. And that really cut down on lines. They tried it out at Disney World first, and then they made it available at other parks in the cruise line. One of the other things they did is being able to pay with this. So Disney World has a lot of things. You could put a credit card on it. You could have a meal plan and all this. And they added the ability to pay for your meals with it as well, which is pretty cool. The way they secured it is they put a pin on it. So you can just tap it and you're done. You're good to go, making even less lines. They put Fast Pass on it. And then the really cool thing that they added is that when you go on a ride, has anybody gone on a ride and you're like on a roller coaster, you got your arms up in the air, and they take a picture of you? It's always the worst picture, isn't it? Yeah, I've got quite a few of those. My wife insisted on buying, and it's just like, I'm going to hide this when we get home. Don't need my friends seeing that. But one of the cool things is they put in NFC readers on the rides. So now when you go on a ride, within like a few hours, your picture shows up on your account from that ride. and you can buy it. So I thought that was pretty cool. So let's actually talk about what we can do. Like I mentioned earlier, it's built into many devices. You could read it in the background. So one of the cool things, that's interesting. One of the cool things you can do with Android is I can program a business card, or I can program a URL, or I can program basically a small file with a MIME type on here, and I can put it up against my phone, and it'll open up the file or the URL or the business card and add it to my contacts. And you can actually write those with Android and read them in the background. So if I had my phone locked, it's gonna pop up with the display and say, you want to open this URL in your browser. And then iOS 11, Apple, in their infinite wisdom, decided that you needed to read the NFC using their special dialogues. And does anybody here work with designers? Yeah. They don't like this. I can't say that I blame them, because it breaks the look and feel of your app. It breaks the user experience. So whenever you try to read it, you push a button or activate the read, through an event or something. It shows this little display, right? And then once it reads the NFC tag, it displays this. Does anybody like that? No? Okay, good. I don't have to say some mean things. Yeah, that's not really ideal. But whatever. Okay. And then iOS 12 came along. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be so great. We're going to be able to read in the background. So those things that I was telling you about, if I have my phone locked and I have a business card, right, with an NFC tag on it, I just tap it to the back of the phone and it's going to add it to my contacts, right? Well, iOS was going to be able to do that, right? They were going to give us read in the background, but only on certain devices. I think Apple might be a hardware company. They're really trying to sell their new phones. So, yeah. All right. Who here has an iPhone X, S, or R? Yeah? They're pretty nice. I like mine. I recently had to break down and get one because I was working on an iOS app, and I just couldn't test it on my Android for some reason. I don't know why. So let's go to a demo. Everybody likes code, right? Everybody here likes code? Anybody not like code? Okay, good, because you'd be at the wrong conference. So let's get out of this. All right. So what we're going to do is we're not going to use that project because that's already done. So we're going to do file new here. Everybody here using Visual Studio 2019? Yeah? On Mac? Yeah. So we're going to start a new Android app. Who here writes solely iPhone apps? Anybody? Okay, good. So NFC demo. We're just going to name it NFC demo. And we're going to select a single view app. And we're going to go with Lollipop. There's some Android versions that don't support certain NFC tags. When you start out, if you are lucky enough to have a paid project, do your research on what is supported and what's not on NFC tags before you buy your NFC tags. That's one of the big things I've heard is that Android 4 doesn't support certain types, and they went and bought a bunch of NFC tags and started writing it, and they had some older devices, and they ended up having to rebuy them all. So that didn't work out very well for them. So let's create a new project. We're doing 5 Lollipop, And every time I see that, I have to think of the song Lollipop. Does anybody else do that? Okay. All right. And like all good demos, I'm going to cheat and copy and paste. Does anybody mind? Not writing code on the spot, on the fly. All right. Hello, compile. Come on. There we go. Okay, so I'm connected now. And Visual Studio is frozen up on me. Yay. Okay, here we go. All right. So I have a blank single page project. Nothing special going on here, right? Can everybody read this in the back? I can zoom in if you need. Speak now. Yeah. Okay. All right. Try to guess beforehand how big it needs to be, but you never know. So let's, the first thing we need to do is we need to allow, we need to allow our app to use NFC. We have to ask permission, you know. And we're gonna add it in both places because I like being redundant. Use permission. I'm going to cheat. I'm not going to cheat. Let's do it this way. All right, so I have my handy little checkbox here. It's kind of hard to read. I'm sorry, I don't know how to adjust this screen. I'm sure there's some fancy way to do it that James Montemagno would tell me or something. But so the only permission we'll need for this project is NFC, just straight up NFC. If you can't read that, I'm going to go ahead and check that, and I'm going to save it, and it should update my Android manifest so you can actually see what I added. All right. I don't think that was there before. I might have accidentally checked accept handover. Let's get rid of that. And just because I like being redundant, I'm going to add it to my assembly. And I didn't include that either. Okay. All right. And I'm going to double cheat by actually looking at my existing project. No. Okay. Manifest. That's not right. Copy and paste. All right, so I'm going to copy the constant here for NFC. So if you prefer using the assembly, you can. And that NFC right there is just android.permission.nfc, if you're wondering. It's a little hard to see the tooltip. All right, so now we have our permissions in place, you know, the really boring stuff. Let's actually get into the code. So the first thing that we're going to want is we want an NFC adapter because, you know, Android loves adapters. We're going to set it up as a class variable, and I'm going to add the namespace android.nfc. That's where a lot of our NFC stuff is going to come from. And then in my onCreate, I'm going to assign it by copying and pasting some code and getting the default adapter. The nice thing is I've seen that Android devices that don't have an NFC reader or writer, instead of throwing an exception, it's just going to return a null. Yes, I will check it. I will make sure that it's not null, and I'll throw a message. So there probably is a way to check it, but it just returns a null, and I like doing things the easy way. So I mean, we could look around here. Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Okay, so it'll return null. Yes?
You're using the Android API over there, right?
Yes.
Is there any cross-platform option nowadays?
So there are some cross-platform options. If you look, I believe there's one in the Xamarin. If you look for Xamarin component plugins, there is an NFC plugin there. I haven't used it myself because I like writing NFC tags, and you can't do that on iOS. So, yeah. Thank you, Apple. So let's throw these in here. These aren't really important to NFC. They're just to make my app work. I have some class variables. I'm going to have an in-write mode, so just a flag to let me know that I'm trying to write to an NFC tag. And I'm going to have my NFC adapter, which I already put here, so let's delete that. And then I have my fabulous floating action button. If that's not a mouthful to you, then all right. One of the really neat things that you can do with this is that you can register a MIME type on here, and you can register a MIME type with your app. So whenever let's use the actual Android phone. Whenever I tap it here, it's going to know to open my app. And I can do something very specific with it. I can provide it like an ID or something like that, or a little bit of data. And it will open up my app if I register that MIME type with it. So let's copy that. Anybody play with MIME types a lot? Like reading MIME type specifications? No? Okay, good. Let's grab this bit of code. So this is overly complicated. I will show you the important bits. Okay? So I added the Android content namespace, if you didn't see that. And I'm going to use an intent filter, because I'm intent on looking at tags. Dang it. And with this, I'm going to enable write. So I'm looking to detect tags. So this is where it gets a little complicated with coding, right? Because I have to touch this here. And if it's not close enough or whatever, when I hit the button, so there's some user interaction going on here. So you want to sit and wait and listen for the user to tap the tag on here, okay? Right. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm just checking to see if the NFC adapter is null. If it is null, I'm going to tell the user that there's no NFC reader on here. And if there is one, then I'm going to start listening by enabling the foreground dispatch for the NFC adapter. Does anybody have any questions on that? Feel free to ask questions through the demo.
Sean, can you do this with Xamarin Forms?
Can I do this in Xamarin Forms? So what I would want to do is write an interface, and then I would write a service for Android. Because it works differently for iOS and Android, there's a lot. You'd have to think about the workflow because they're both going to be different between iOS and Android. Was there another question? I could have said NFC doesn't equal null and then enable. There's no, it's just how I did it. All right. Were there any other questions? Okay. So we want to be able to actually write to the tag. And there's a ton of different things you can write to a tag. The way that we're going to do these tags is it's a special format called NDEF. There's a couple other ISO specs out there that you could use, but for pretty much all that I'm going to demo here is NDEF, and that allows us to write a MIME type or a URI or like a make a phone call or something like that. And you're going to see a lot of the examples online as NDEF. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the message, and I'm taking the tag that we're going to receive when we tap the tag to the device. I'm going to check if it's writable, because you can make these not writable. Please don't do that if you're learning how to do this, because then you have to get a new one. Because you can make them read-only. And then if it is writable, then I'm going to write the message. This is just a lot of stuff I don't actually need for this example, but I wanted it here if anybody wanted to look at it. One of the things you need to check is you need to make sure that there's enough space on here, because I can't write, like a huge image. I can't store my pictures from my vacation on here. This isn't an SD card, right? And then we can just write the tag. One of the other things that you might run into is if the tag is not formatted, we'll need to be able to format the tag. If you do take one of these to play with, these are not formatted. You're going to have to format them yourself, and you can do that from this code. And you need Android NFC.tech to do that. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect to the tag, and we're going to format it. It's really just 2 lines of code. Okay, so this is really boring. So let's cut to the fun stuff. Does anybody remember what time this is over? 4 minutes? Okay, so let's see some speed coding. All right. By the way, this is going to be not like a mini hack later. So if y'all are interested in learning how to do this, come talk to me. I've got a URL for you. I'm going to replace my fabulous floating action button. Click event. What am I doing wrong there? You're right there. Do I have 2 enable rights? I do. Okay. Let's get rid of this one. Scrolling on the touchpad is a pain in the keister. All right. All right. So let's actually talk about what we're writing somewhere. Put that in here. All right, you know what? Let's just go to the completed one and cheat. In school they always told me that cheating was bad, but when you're doing a demo, does anybody here not copy and paste from Stack Overflow? Yeah, it's all right. Create UI. All right. So here's the couple options. This is the MIME type I was telling you about. You can set a MIME type for whatever and put some data into it. That's really small, what you can put onto it. You want to use TF MIME type media, and that'll create your record. The other option is that you can, there's a ton of options. Let me just click through the IntelliSense. There's text record, a URI. There's all kinds of records. But let's create a URI for this demo. And I'm going to run it here on my Pixel because you can't run this on an emulator because emulators don't have NFC readers. If you figure out how to do that, let me know. You probably have the way into the matrix while you're at it. So just in case y'all are wondering, this is my visor that's hooked up to my phone right here. So you can see it on the screen because then you just have to trust me to see if it works. Come on, I built you earlier. One of the annoying things about writing a URI to an NFC tag is that it automatically sets it up to open the browser, so it's a little hard to overwrite. There are a few apps out there. I haven't figured out how to do it in the code to fix that, but to overwrite a URI on an NFC tag. Come on, there we go. Okay. What? Okay. What did I do wrong? Oh, there it is. All right, so NFC Playground. I'm going to click this little floating action button. Well, still there. Okay. All right, so now I'm writing to the tag. I'm going to tap it on here. Successfully wrote the tag. You probably can't see that, right? So now this will open a URI whenever I touch it to an NFC tag reader on a phone, like this. And if we had better Wi-Fi here, it'd actually load. All right. All right, thank you all. I'd have Q&A, but I think y'all want to get to lunch. You feel free to find me after or come up here and talk to me. Just FYI, my company's looking to hire a junior mobile developer. There's a URL at the top if y'all are interested. If you have any questions after the talk, hit me up on Twitter or email me. I'm much more responsive on Twitter. And if you want an NFC tag, I have them up here. One per customer, please.